To episode 27 of Tax Sale Titans. I'm Shade Foray here with Stephen Swenson. We've got a number of fun things to go through tonight. I think a lot of interesting topics that we're going to be reviewing. So we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of excited. We're going to be talking about New Hampshire. We try to find states, that maybe we haven't covered in the past. So we're going to talk about and look at a couple of auctions that had sales in New Hampshire. We're going to talk about land banks and the opportunities that are available there. Then we're going to go look at some Nevada auctions. And if you have any questions throughout the podcast, go ahead and put them in the chat section, and we'll get to them if they're on topic, or at the very end, we'll go through and answer all the questions.
Yeah, we also just want to give a shout out to all of our coaching members, our program members, all of our YouTube members and subscribers. I mean, really, we've had a lot of you that have followed our videos or watched our stuff for a long time, and we're grateful for that. We welcome you out, and it's good to have everybody. We enjoy the tax sale investing group. I think as a whole, they tend to be fun people to teach and are very teachable. So we really enjoy that.
Yeah, in fact, even on our tax sale support YouTube channel, we have followers that have been following us since 2007. So we definitely appreciate it. So what we're going to do first is we're going to talk about New Hampshire, and we're going to look at some auctions that have taken place over the last 6-7 months or so in New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire is classified as a tax deed state, but they're a little bit different than other states because they're going to sell through the cities and municipalities and the townships. So unlike most tax sales, you're going to be looking at a county level. Here, every single city is going to have their own tax sale essentially. So after 2 years of being delinquent, then the city tax collector will go ahead and initiate the foreclosure process. Now, they have to advertise this at least 25 days before the auction. So usually at about a month before the auction, that's when you're going to start seeing the tax sale list come up.
Yeah, the sales themselves are sold by oral bid. Now, is this an online auction we're going to be looking at tonight?
No, in fact, most of New Hampshire's are all on-site auctions. I can only find a couple examples of online auctions, so most of this is going to be held right there in the city town hall.
But what that means, though, for anybody that's listening, is there are places around the country that still hold live auctions. And the advantage of living in those areas is that, you can kind of be there to participate in sales, and the only competition are the people around you and the amount of money that comes in that room that day. And so there can be wonderful opportunities there to get properties at very good prices. If you happen to live in that area, it's an advantage you should take advantage of, or at least something that you should consider. So other than that, though, they use premium bidding, just like most other states where, you're bidding the property up, high bidder wins. Some of them do have over-the-counter deeds. So they have I believe there are some auction sites here, some on-site auctions, some other auctions that they'll do, but we're going to go and check a look at some of these properties here that sold, actually remarkable properties. I was looking at these earlier, Steve was showing me, and I was kind of blown away by just how good the deals are in a place like New Hampshire, which I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah. In fact, one thing to talk about as well is that some of the New Hampshire sales will allow you to do sealed bids. So there can still be opportunity for out-of-state investors to invest if that particular city is doing some type of sealed bid. So that's something to kind of keep in mind as well. Now, it's a lot harder to find. You can find lots of tax sale lists, but finding the results are a little bit tougher. So in this case, we're going to look at a couple of different counties. The first property that we're going to look at is kind of a beaten up house, but we're going to get into it a little bit more. So this home right here and this lot right here, essentially this whole area was purchased for about $75,000. So in looking at them, let's get a little bit more into the details.
Yeah, let's pull up the list if we can.
I don't know where I think I got these off of a different list. So this property and this property ended up selling for $75,000. So this one right here We can kind of see older photos of it. But what they ended up doing is they've got this property listed right now, or just sold. So this sold, just recently for $99,000. So this was this second lot that was right here, and they went ahead and torn down this house, and then they've sold this lot right here for $100,000. And I would imagine that they're probably doing the rehab on this particular home. So together, this property was worth about 236 plus another $100,000. So, about $336,000. They paid 75,000 for it, and they've already made 100 grand out of it.
Yeah, that seems pretty good.
There's a couple of these ones, and then we'll go look at the other ones. Now this house here, and this was, again, look how small of area this is. So if we're looking in the bigger cities, there's going to be, probably some more nicer properties, but, looking for those sold results, this is a big old home. And usually we would probably avoid this type of property, but, it does have a value of 332,000. So when I was looking through here, there wasn't a lot of cheap homes that were selling for that cheap. So if we bought this, if me and Shade bought this, I would imagine that we would probably just clear it out, secure it up, and then sell it to somebody at a discount where we can make a good profit.
If you click on the Rochester, the top of the tax sale titans of Rochester, New Hampshire, it'll hold the list. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. So that's the list that we're working off of, right?
Yeah.
All right, so that's the $75,000 sale there. You can see that they're not huge sales, but they're also, you've got very limited numbers of buyers here, and the amounts are still pretty low.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and these are probably local investors. So the next one we're going to look is this property right here that ended up selling for 120, and it's this one right here. And so, they paid quite a bit for it, but I would imagine that, somebody was willing to buy it. Now, here's a little bit newer of a property. This is this one. I don't know why it's doing that. Right here, that was sold for 140,000. And it's this apartment essentially right here, excuse me. So in looking at it, Redfin, they're valuing it at about 186,000. It's a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath.
286.
287,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. Built in 1980. So it's a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and here's a property that's in the exact same area that just sold for 300.
Yeah. So the value on the property looks like it's around 274 to 300 is kind of what we're seeing there with the comps, and meaning that they picked it up for about half a value maybe. And the one before that, I think valued it closer to like 360. They probably picked that one up for about a third of value.
Yeah. Well, and these first two properties are probably going to need some work, right? I mean, obviously. But this next one, we're looking at, essentially a condo unit in here. So we don't have to worry about the roof. We don't have to worry about the foundation. I know that we always say this type of thing, but in this case, we're just going to be really, rehabbing the interior on it, which is probably not going to cost us that much as in comparable to trying to rehab one of the other properties we were looking at.
Yeah, well, it was built in 1980. It's like 1,068 square feet, so it's not that big. It's 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, so there's a limited amount of stuff that you need to fix up inside the property, and all that stuff makes it safer for an out-of-state investor in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so I mean, they're still getting it for under 50 cents on the dollar, or about 50 cents on the dollar, and it has a high enough value that, let's say that they put in even 20 grand, which is only 1,000 square feet, 2-bedroom with bath. So you could do, a pretty good little rehab on it, and at that point, be able to make over 100 grand on it.
Yeah, I mean that first property for 75,000, they really have they got both properties for 75,000, and there's a potential there for the property to be worth a lot, to be worth 300 plus, 350,000 plus. So there's a lot of profitability in some of these deals, especially for just being a local live auction that people in New Hampshire can attend.
Yeah. Now, here's a property, essentially it ended up selling in this Barrington City area. And, we can see that it sold for 7,500. I mean, 7,500. The county's valued it at about 31,000. You can see some of the details down here, but essentially it had kind of this little shed and an outhouse on it. But as we look a little bit into it, they've actually provided us with a video of the property. So it's got a creek running through it. And then as it comes around, you'll kind of see where that structure is at. So this was picked up for $7,500. The county's valued at about 35.
Yeah.
And here's kind of where the property would be located at. Here's kind of that little river you can see that comes through that side. Here's Redfin kind of just doing the assessed value. And here's a lot that's pretty close to it that's currently for sale for 89,000.
Yeah, so they paid 31, it's worth about 89.
No, they paid 7,500. That's how much they paid, and that's what the county is assessed it at.
Oh, nice. Well, they really got a good deal on it then.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's only worth, let's say, 37,000 instead of the 90,000, still you picked it up for 7,500. Let's say it's worth 40, you turn around and sell it for even 25 or 30, you've still made a pretty good return on your money. And and kind of looking at some of the comps within this area, I think it's probably closer to 50.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Now this next one here, we can see that essentially it's on this Longshore Drive, and they provided a video as well for it, which this is nice. I mean, this isn't something that you see all the time. It's part of the reason kind of chose this particular county to look at. And it's this lot right here. So you can, as you scroll out, you can kind of see that there's kind of this road that goes on both sides of this long pond with homes on either side of it.
And it sold for 4,000?
For 4,000. And the county's assessed it at 15. But here's the exact lot on Redfin valued at 41,000. You can see they're both that 0.33 acre. And then, here's one that sold two lots down. Now it was a couple of years ago, but it sold for 40. So picking it up for $4,000, valued at 40, that's a pretty good deal as well.
Yes, I mean, selling price is at 40 2 years ago, basically. I mean, a year and a half, 2 years ago. It looked like it was in December of 2024. So yeah, the numbers are about as good as you can get there for smaller purchases. I mean, purchase of $4,000 there for a $40,000 lot is pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. You're getting a tax deed on it. There's, no redemption period to it. In fact, here's another one that sold for 40,000 in November of 2024.
Yeah,
it's
a couple of good comps in the area to kind of set the value. So the value's pretty solidly at that $40,000 mark for a property that you picked up for $4,000 and it's assessed at about 15.
Yeah. So overall, I think a pretty good deal, worth bidding on. Now this is one ended up bidding up. It ended up bidding to 35,000. The county's valued it at 78,000. We'll go ahead and check out that video as well. You can see kind of the lake down there below it. Nice lot. You've already got hookups and everything there to put up a trailer. And it's also got a well and septic.
Yeah, you got to click on the Redfin for this one. It's pretty impressive. At least I think this is the Redfin.
Well, here's a couple of properties that have sold. So, Redfin's valued it at 73,000. But as we look into the comps, that's really where we can get an idea. This one is valued at
That's right. It's the
200.
second comp. It's the second comp that I was looking at that sets that value.
Well, yeah, this one does. This one has a structure on it, but it's just kind of an old trailer, so also a pretty nice lot. So this is a little bit different, but I was trying to find comps that were as close as I could to this, and this is a little bit, kind of a small community.
Yeah. Well, in any case, it's valued at least 150 to 200,000 probably, and
Yeah,
maybe above that.
yeah, yeah. I think it could easily be worth, it's definitely higher than 73. Like Shade said, I think it could be as high as 150. And what's nice about it is you've got, the well and septic already there. That's huge. You've got your own water and a septic right there on the property, which means it's closer to an improved property. This is the perfect camping type property for somebody if they wanted to, or they could, build on it as well.
Yeah, well, and the one thing all these properties have in common is these are all picked up for fairly low amounts. I mean, this one they paid 35 for a little bit, but again, there's also the potential for probably $100,000 worth of profit from that deal. The next one they only paid 3,000 for, and it's got quite a bit of value here as well. But they're smaller investments, the kind of investments that you can do, for less than $5,000, and have properties that have substantial value.
Yeah, here's one that sold for 3,000.
Yeah, and it's about a 0.44 acre lot. The county assesses it at about 16,000, but it's on that same pond, that we're just looking at there with the other that $327,000 mobile home lot there. It's one of the lots here that mobile home was on this same pond, and so all of these are very similar in that they're pulling comps, from other nearby properties here. So the values are pretty solid based on everything around here that's currently selling.
Yeah, you're right between these two other homes. Here it is on Redfin, valued at $80,000. Here's one that sold in. Now this one's on the other side, but this is just kind of a directly above it. So it's going to have a higher value, but it's still sold for 200,000. So even if we say that it's only worth 80,000, which I think it could be worth as high as 120, it's sold for $3,000.
Yeah, and those are numbers that are as good as you can find anywhere. I mean, that's picking up properties for, under 5% of value. It's basically picking up for close to 1 or 2% of value. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Now this next one, is 6.6 acres, and it's right here off of this road. So it's kind of starts right here and then goes all the way over here. And if we're looking at the map here, we can kind of see it also includes this little piece down here below as well.
Is that to access the water? Is that an access point?
No, this is just kind of a little road that you can see kind of goes back along here. You can kind of see it right here as well. So it kind of splits off, but it's really got all of this frontage from right here all the way to here. So if we look down this is kind of all it, all along here. It was picked up for 55,000. Here's a comp that's actually half the size of it. This is actually right off of this road. So if we were coming back and looking at this, I don't know why it took me there, but this is just off of the main road that we were just looking at. So, this is right kind of off of here. So this is right there on the main road.
Yeah, it's half the size, and it sold for 185,000 in 2024.
Yeah. This one again is half the size, sold for 160, and this one's way out. Not way out, but it's not right there close to the road, off of the main road with the other road as well.
That's interesting. So the one that they bought It very well could be worth about this amount here, 360,000. That what they got for 55.
Yeah, yeah, and sold. I had to go back a few years to find some good comps, and that's something to think about as well. You want to check into the real estate market, but when you're picking up, you know, a property like this, 55, for $55,000, and it's 6.2 acres. Plus, it's along this road, so it could be used. It could potentially be used as commercial. If it's not, it's probably residential now, but you could easily do as commercial. So probably, overall, I think was a good deal for him.
Yeah, I think that turned into a really good deal.
Now we're going to look at a few more before we flip it back. Now, this was interesting to me. I think that these were probably, I mean, those deals were good, but these were pretty incredible. So they had all of these lots that were in this development that essentially almost got built. It didn't get finished getting built, or some of it got built. Like some of these roads go out to them. And what they did is they just grouped them together and sold them in 4 different batches. So A1 through A4. So this first batch is this A1 that we can see over here to the left-hand side, and we can kind of get an idea of what it sold for right here. So it sold for $20,000, and it's 12 acres, and the county's assessed it at $127,000.
That's crazy because it's probably worth quite a bit more than the 127.
Yeah, yeah. They did kind of provide a video. It's a little bit longer. We won't go through all of 23 seconds, but they just kind of drive past it. But you can get kind of a better idea by looking, from Google Maps. So this property, we can see here where the street goes, and then it kind of comes here to St. Matthews. So where you would do a road if you were to build this would kind of be right out through here past this big home right here. But this is a whole development where there's, a bunch of really, really nice homes. So you can kind of see where, where there's the first 3 lots, and then that's where you'd kind of build a road, and that's where that big mansion is sitting. It's on lot 29 right here. So we'll look here at the comps here in a minute, but just based on that one, sold for 20 grand, valued at 127. This next one is this section right here that ended up selling for 30 grand, and it's almost 20 acres, valued at 285.
Oh, that's crazy. The fact they're getting it for 10% of assessed is nuts.
Yeah. Well, you can kind of see this is right up here. So this is all of this kind of area up here right here. So you've actually got a road out there to where this lot starts, and this road kind of goes all over to the side of here. So, it kind of starts here and then ends, kind of out here. So it kind of takes this right portion of it. And then the third one is this lot right here. So these 2 lots that are right here.
Yeah, it's basically 4 acres picked up for 20,000.
Yeah, and it's right in this area. So 4 acres for 20,000. And what was interesting is here is the actual property, and they just sold it in January.
For 261.
Yeah.
Holy cow. So they got that for $20,000?
$20,000. And
And 261.
they
Yeah,
just sold it for 261.
holy cow. That's about as good as you'll ever see, for a tax sale deal there. They got it for 10% of value there and have it sold for more than that shortly after.
Yeah, and you can even see, if we're looking at it right here, we can kind of see exactly where that is, where it kind of juts out right there and then comes down. And we can kind of see the same thing happening right here. So this is exactly the lot. They picked it up for 20 grand, and they sold it for 261,000.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. And kind of get a look of it there. Here's a couple of other type of comps. This is only 2.3 acres, sold for 153. 3.6 acres, and look how kind of weird it is. It
Yeah.
sold 143, and this was 5 acres, and this one's a little bit off the beaten path. This sold for 150. And then
Yeah,
there's this last one as well. And it's
yeah,
this section right down here, A4.
yeah. It's like 14.6 acres that was picked up for 40,000, assessed at 496.
Yeah. And what's kind of interesting about this one is that it includes this section that's all been cleared out. Me and Shade were talking about this earlier today because it looks like they were probably bringing in dirt or something, because that looks like it was taken from somewhere else. But it kind of starts right along here along the pavement, goes down this way. You can kind of go back and see it here. That's kind of where that starts at.
Holy cow! For 40 grand, they're going to be able to make $500,000 on that.
Yeah, so that, it kind of starts right here, goes down there quite a ways, and then goes all back there.
Holy cow! That's nuts. It's not every day that you'll see an investment for under 50,000 with that kind of profit potential on it.
Yeah, I mean, even if we're just taking what the county says, they're valuing it at $500,000.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, when we talk about, and there was a structure on it as well, which, looks like it was kind of old, but still, this is buying in property for less than 10 cents on the dollar and having the opportunity to easily make 300 grand.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. I'm sure. I mean, they're already subdivided essentially. So
Yeah.
I wonder you could probably sell them separately.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what some of the plan probably would be. But this person that just bought the 2 lots, they did what was, that was smart what they did, because, really the road was already kind of out there anyway. They have this Susan Lane, and it goes right here to the edge of their property. Now it's not, the greatest road, but you've still got a dirt road going out to the property, and then just turn around and ended up selling it for 261,000.
Yeah, every single one of those deals are crazy deals. So for if anybody in New Hampshire that can attend some of these auctions, these are some examples of some of the best types of land that you can find anywhere in the country, really.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, kind of interesting. And again, when we found lots of past sale, we could have showed you even some, well, not probably not as great a land deal. I mean, that land deal was awesome, or a couple of those land deals. But there's some really nice properties that come up to the market. It's just finding out what they sold for, not what their minimum amount was. So, these are properties that have sold. We know what they sold for, and so I'm sure we can find this the same in many of the other cities and towns within that area. So
Yeah,
I'll go ahead and
interesting.
pass this back to you, Shade.
All right. Well, excellent. That was quite interesting here, and very amazing deals. I mean, you just don't see numbers like that, properties that are picked up for 20,000 with that kind of profit potential every day. And it does just also go to show you that there are more opportunities in the U.S. than we can ever probably really show you. There's so many little corners of the market that are they have awesome opportunities like that, and where people are just killing it, and I'm sure they don't want anybody to know about it. So yeah, very interesting. Land banks, they are a fairly new phenomenon, at least I would say over the last 30 or 40 years, but they're the result of an ongoing problem that I think existed for a long time. And that was, for the longest time, counties had a problem trying to draw enough investors out to their sales to get all their properties sold. And even when they could, a lot of counties had properties that were with more taxes that were owed on them than they may have been worth. And sometimes properties just don't sell. On top of that, counties get all kinds of properties. People pass away. Sometimes you have to improve properties and homes. It's really just more work than the county could ever handle, especially in your big cities. In some of your big cities, counties were absolutely just swamped with work trying to manage over their properties. And as a result, properties were suffering and they were having a hard time doing the job. That's where land banks came in. Basically, what counties did was they created a nonprofit that they could hand over some of those controls to. They could help them, acquire, hold, manage, and even redevelop properties in the area, and to do so for the benefit of the local community. And so the whole idea here is to take properties and put them back into productive use. with a new owner, and for all of this to kind of help the community, beautify the community, fix the community in a lot of ways. So they're good programs, in a sense. They're all about trying to help the locals and help manage the inventory. But what it means for us as investors is that a lot of the opportunities that exist are going to exist there, in some of these land banks, whereas in the past they may have been in over-the-counter lists. Today they're in land banks.
Yeah, in fact, and kind of looking at the history, like Shade said, they've really kind of been popping up in the last 10 or 15 years. I looked to see when was the very first land bank, and it looked like there was a few of them that started in the 30 that was kind of a way to provide cheap land and housing, but really we haven't seen them until more recently. And like Shade talked about, really the purpose for them is to put properties that are essentially right now a liability and make them something positive where they can start getting used again, but more importantly, they can start getting property taxes again and have somebody that's actually caring for the property, because in some of these areas, these homes were turning into areas of crime, vagrants, different things like that where people were in them. And so it just helped the community be able to do something with them so that they don't all turn into potential fire hazards.
Yeah, the main way they get properties is just through the tax sale and through properties that aren't purchased. That's the number one way that they end up acquiring property. But they can also end up, anything that is basically city or county held is something that they can have purview over. So, or donations from the public. That's also something that you can find. But in any case, the one thing they do act as is another gatekeeper. So the establishment of land banks basically requires, not just the cooperation of governments around there, but also they have to have it approved at the state level. But what it means for us is that they end up kind of setting the rules for what needs to be done for a purchase, or what a property's selling price is going to be, or if there's any stipulations of things you have to agree to when you go to buy a property. So it also means that the rules vary by state. Every time you go into a land bank, they're probably going to have their own set of rules here that they have, or things that they want you to go by. And it invariably, they are originally meant to provide services for the local individual first, and then for somebody that's out of state after that. So if you happen to live in an area where a land bank operates, it's worth taking a look to see if they have anything that could potentially work as an investment, because you can probably get a better price on something, or others outside the area may not even be eligible to buy the properties. So you can basically buy from, as a small group of people that are, that are entitled to the inventory. We've seen that in cases before, but there are enough land banks that are out there. It's worth checking to see if there's one in your individual area, just because so many of them have popped up, and so many of them now have inventory that they're selling. That's where a lot of the over-the-counter inventory has gone over the last 15 years.
Yeah, well, and really, every land bank is going to be completely different with what they're going to require that needs to be done, what type of properties are available. They offer all types of properties. We've seen land, we've seen lots, we've seen, obviously homes, and we've seen commercial property, but it's going to depend on how many properties they have in that area and kind of what their rules are, if that's an area we want to invest in or not. So it's important as we look at these different land banks to see exactly what their rules are. It can be worth giving them a quick call. They're usually pretty happy to help. That's the one thing about the land banks, is they're a little bit different than the county, because when you're contacting them, it's kind of their job to help sell these properties. And so many times they're going to be a lot, many of them are willing to work with you, and it can help you with whatever the rules they have set up. But like I mentioned, you can find all different types of real estate within these different land banks.
Yeah, a lot of them have a lot of homes, and that's kind of what they are helping to manage, is to make sure that homes aren't getting ruined. And it can be a benefit in a lot of ways, because what they do differently from the county is they basically will go inside the property if the county hasn't done that yet, and they'll get evaluations, they'll get estimates done on certain work that needs to be done on the property. In some cases, they'll get images of the property that maybe the county didn't have before. They can provide us with a lot of information and details that the county wasn't really providing because they didn't have enough time to do it. So yeah, there's at least 250 land banks in the United States, and they're growing all the time. And some of these land banks have over 1,000 properties in them. Some of them probably have several thousand properties, in them that are available in one way or another. And so, uh, you should check to see what kind of inventory land banks in your area have. In most states, I can't think of a state that doesn't have land banks here. There may be some state out there, but the majority of states have set up land banks now to kind of help the counties manage over some of that county-held land that they have. And so you can download a list of those and kind of go through those and also see whatever the requirements are. In fact, a lot of them have online maps that are set up with their properties laid out, across the city. So you can see which properties are available, which properties they've sold before, which properties are deals in the past, or basically which properties are under contract. You can essentially see. So yeah, lots of different kinds of land banks here. Here's an example of one for the Central Illinois Land Bank Authority. And usually what you're looking for here is anything that's going to let you see what their inventory is, view our properties, which if we click on right there, it would pull up this list like this, where we can see kind of a list of properties that they have. And these are all homes that we're looking at right here. And so they have links, they have the full property address and which city or village, these properties lie in. And you can see it's not a huge number. They have like 6 houses here right now, but with these houses they probably have quite a bit of information on them.
Yeah, this is an example of a smaller land bank. Some are only going to have a limited number of properties. Others, in this case, you can see, had, what is that number down there? 2,400. And so this was a collection of different land banks that have put their properties here within the State Land Bank Authority. But you can go to some of these areas where there's lots of different land for sale. In fact, we've had students that have just picked up land and land banked and then turn around and flipped it on eBay for 500 to 1,000% return. So we can find all different types of property, land and and homes in some of these different areas.
Yeah, here's an example of in that same area, some of the land bank homes that they have, and you can see they've got images here of the property, of a lot of the details here. These are some of the these are all out of Michigan Land Bank, that one that we were looking at, and yeah, you can see with this one, the property has restricted eligibility until February 1st, 2023. Applications will only be reviewed from qualified nonprofit housing development entities. That's interesting. So this one, they need a nonprofit housing developer to come in and to buy up some of theirs. At least that's the rule that they've set on their on these particular properties. So again, it's one of those things that happens when you have another gatekeeper, though, that's involved in the process. They can help in a lot of ways, but also they can also kind of decide which properties can be sold to who and how. And so you can find good deals, though. Not all the counties require nonprofit purchases like this.
No, and in fact, there's many of them that'll even cater to investors and property owners. So it kind of depends on, like Shade said, each one's going to be a little bit different. These are just different examples that are on, one of the Land Bank Authority websites. And you can kind of see a map there of all the properties, and you can click on them individually and pull up and see some more about the details. And at this point, if we were interested in it, we'd probably take that parcel number and go to the county that's located and do some additional due diligence on it. But this can at least give us a way to kind of quickly see where it's at, close approximation of where the address is at. And then if it looks good from there, that's where we'd go through and do more due diligence.
Yeah, on some of these, what's nice is you can pick out properties based on where they're located at geographically. So we can if there might be areas within the city or within the county that we're interested in, other parts of the county we're not. This will make it a little bit easier here. In this case, this is a land bank for Albany County in New York, and they've got about 759 properties in their land bank here. What's interesting as well with this same land bank is that they also have a lot of homes in it, and in the homes that they have some of these homes being offered up through the real estate market by realtors. And I've told the story before, but we were out there for an auction in New York, and we were viewing other properties that were for sale in the area, and we saw a property that looked kind of rough, but the price on it was pretty good, and think one of the people at the event was considering buying it. And so when we got a hold of a purchase agreement on it, we realized that it was actually owned by the county, that it was a land bank property. We didn't know that at the time that we were looking at it, but it happened to be a land bank property that they were just kind of showing there on the open market. And so yeah, they're finding all kinds of ways to get properties moving. We see the asking price on this one is about $8,000, which is not that bad. I mean, this one did sell. Yeah, listing comment sold. You can imagine, because it's a fairly clean property. I mean, it had $3,600 in back taxes that were owed, but selling for 8,000, pretty clean house here. So it would make sense as to why somebody would pay it.
Yeah, definitely. Like Shade said, some of these are going to be working with investors, whether they sell that to you, whether they, in that case, they went ahead and listed with an agent. I've seen land banks that list part of the properties with an agent and then sell some directly to investors. Each one is going to be a little bit different. Here's another property that was currently available. They were asking $8,000 for it. It looks like it didn't have any number there as far as closing. But in addition to just being able to see a photo of it, many times, in fact, most of the time, I would say they're going to have detailed information on it. They've already had inspections done on it. Some of them will give you a full printout of what needs to be done. You can get interior photos. You can get walkthroughs. Kind of think of them as a nonprofit real estate sales company. That's what they're trying to do. So if you can work with them, you can pick up properties at the right price. In addition to that, many times you can even get title insurance on these properties. Some of them will have warranty deeds where they've gone through quiet title or at least insure the deed. So, as far as that's concerned, it's kind of like the best of a tax deal investment and the best of regular real estate investment. Is you've kind of got this chance where you can buy these, not directly from the county, but through a nonprofit that takes these county properties and they're interested in selling them. And some of these are doing hundreds of deals a year. They wouldn't be doing hundreds of deals a year. Investors wouldn't be doing those deals if they weren't making good profit on each one of them.
Yeah, well, in fact, it is interesting how we see a lot of these starting to offer things like marketable title, for the property. Like, you can get title insurance or warranty deeds on the properties, or at least making it much easier to get financed on deals. Getting a lot of this stuff done before you buy almost makes it different from a tax sale property in some ways. Just because there are better opportunities. In fact, Greg, Greg is one of the students we have there that has bought several of these land bank properties and has fixed them up and worked with counties, and that's kind of something he said, is that they're very good to work with as long as you keep them informed. The counties are great to work with, and he's done it multiple times, and so I would believe him. But it's also important though to understand all of the rules, for the land bank and exactly what you're getting into, what the timeframes are. In fact, what he said about the timeframes that was kind of interesting was that they wanted the work done within a year, but they're actually pretty flexible if you are just in regular communication with them. If they just know what's going on, they generally leave you alone.
Yeah. Now, as far as what they're going to ask, is going to be completely dependent upon that individual land bank. We looked at that last lot. They were offering it for $600. The home they were offering for $8,000. We've seen some where they've offered more. We've even seen some where they'll go ahead and redo the home through the land bank and then reoffer it that way. So when you're looking at land banks, you can usually get an idea pretty quickly if this is one that's going to have some opportunity. You can read the rules. You can look at what inventory is available. You can see if they have minimum bid amounts. And so you don't have to spend a huge amount of time to say this one's probably not for me. Let me look for another one.
Yeah, and they do some of them cater towards home buyers, and some of them cater towards more for lots and things like that. It kind of depends on what you're looking for there, but it's certainly worth the time to check out and see if there are land banks in some of the areas that you're investing in, and certainly areas where you live as well. See if they have land banks in that area, because you might be surprised at what is available and what some of the opportunities are. They're especially a good way for local investors or non-home owners, to get a home or rehab. Like, for instance, if you wanted to get a home to buy in the area to fix up, for yourself, it would be a great way to get a property at a very low percentage of value, and to be able to put equity into the property basically as you fix it up. But yeah, there are a lot of properties. There can also be ways to pick up properties for deep discounts as well that are in pretty good shape, and to be able to do so with more information than you could normally get from the tax sale.
Yeah, and for any of the people that are members, you know that all of those land banks are available on the website. In fact, I was going through them even today to see if they've added any more that we can include on our list. So if there is a new one coming up, we're going to keep that information saved right there.
Yeah, you bet. Great. Now, for this portion here, for the pre-auction portion, we're going to be looking at an upcoming sale that is happening here in White County, Nevada. So, like Steve said, we're trying to look at some areas here that we haven't looked at before. This is kind of a new county for us. Now, we've dealt with Nevada plenty before. Nevada is classified as a tax deed state, so most of the counties utilize tax deeds, but there are liens. Tax lien certificates are used in a few of the larger counties, like like in the Las Vegas area. I forget the name of that county.
Yeah, Clark County.
Clark
You
County.
know,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, so usually about after 2 years of being delinquent, the county is going to go ahead and start the foreclosure process, and they usually sell it about after 3 years. But like Shade was talking, that these are called special assessment liens. So in Clark County, for example, Las Vegas, they're still going to sell tax deed properties. But some of these areas, like in towns, they also do it in Reno. If there's things that are done, you know, within that area, then they'll place what's called a special assessment lien on it. So it's not for property taxes, it's for the county spending money or the city spending money on something.
Yeah. So an example of that would be things like pavement, curbs, gutters, street lights, things like that are special assessment fees that they may add to the property. So if they go and put, let's say something like that, and in front of your home or in your neighborhood, they may add a special assessment fee that you have to pay there. And if you don't pay off that thing, then it'll become a special assessment lien, against the property. And it's just like any other lien in that way. They'll sell off that lien to investors, so they can collect the money for it right away, and the investors can earn about 12% on their money, which is going to be secured by property. So it's a great investment for them. But most of Nevada operates off of tax deeds, and they do have a number of online auctions, but some of the counties are still conducted through live sales or in-person sales. So you've got some that are online, but you also have some in-person sales.
Yeah, exactly. They use a premium bid system, like many tax deed auctions where they just start at the delinquent taxes and they bid up in price until whoever wins the property. And then at that point, you go ahead and get the deed. In fact, they're pretty good at getting out those deeds as well. So the counties we're going to look at are a little bit more rural. They just had their Las Vegas sale, their Clark County sale at the first of this month. So I'm going to try contacting the county and see if we can get the sold list so we can kind of go through and review those. So once I'm able to get that, we'll go through and see what the property sold for in Las Vegas. But these are a little bit more rural counties, but it'll still be kind of interesting to look into them.
Yeah, so White Pine County, we can see, a couple of weeks ago, we talked a little bit about the Elko County sale that was just happening. It's to the county just south of Elko County, essentially. So we can see where it's located at right here. It's definitely a very rural county here. About 9,000 people in it. And so I think this is one of the sales here that's conducted on site here, a live auction. But what
Yeah,
we can see though is this is their tax sale list. So these are the tax sale properties they have. This list is about 4 pages long. We can see the properties that they have listed there. We can also see some properties have redeemed here, and we have a number of properties here with bidding that starts at fairly low amounts here on some of these. But we've got a variety of different property types, and that's what we're going to check out here is a few of these. So minimum bid of $5,000, I think, is going to be one of these first here. Let's pull up this one right here. All right, so 283. Let me just see which one this one is
it's the
here.
very first one.
Oh, it is. All right, so it's this
Oh
one
no,
right here.
I'm sorry. The first ones are mobile homes, and so it's the very first one past the mobile homes.
All right, let's see,
Keep,
right.
no, keep going up a little bit. I
Oh,
think.
right here.
Yeah.
It's right there. Okay, so we can see it's the one right here with the minimum bid 5,000. We can see there's the parcel number on it right there. When we pull up that record here, that assessment record, here is the property itself. And what we can see is we've got a single family home. You know, we do have some images here of it. And let's see here. Well, we can see what is owed here. Value of the property total 71 is what they're saying here, $71,000 assessed value. Now let's pull up here and let's look at.
It's actually across the street. Just look across the street and you'll see it. That brown house right there to the left.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So this is a July 2025 image, but clearly it has newer roofing on it. At least the roofing is not bad. Some of the stuff has been painted here before. Now we've also got the address on the property right here, and we can pull up the Redfin on it. So it's valued at about 155. They're saying here. You can see it is an older house, built in 1910. But
Yeah.
the bid to value is really low. In other words, that $5,000 opening bid, it's not even 5% of the, it's not even 5% of the property's value. It's a very low opening bid amount. And so it means that there's a lot of room for this property to bid up. And it means, that it could end up selling with good profit margins.
Yeah, well, and in this area, it's going to be an on-site auction, so you're probably not going to have a whole lot of bidding or competition. I wouldn't be surprised if these properties do sell for maybe not the opening bid amounts, but not as much competition if there's just a couple of people there at the sell.
Yeah, really, it's an impressive opportunity here with that one. At $5,000, $155,000 in value. Yeah, that's just about as good as it gets. Let's look at this one right here. So starting at 2,500, so I think we're looking at the property here, probably just right down below it.
Yeah, I think it's the property. They may have updated their list today after
Yeah,
I did it.
it's possible. It could be that one right there. They're just reading what. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it is. I think they updated the list at the end of the day, which is good. Which is good because it wasn't. It was still available earlier today.
All right, let's see. Let's pull up 1.7 here. So 1.7 is still available here, which is this one right here. We're looking at with the minimum of 1,500 on it. And let's look at that one real quick. So property record pulls up this property right here. We have a mobile home. And let's see, I can see how big the property is it's sitting on here. Let's go down. We've got a few images of the property. It looks like there's also a shed or something there with it. Assessed, they've got it at 36,000.
Yeah, and these obviously aren't sexy properties. We're talking about rural Nevada. But what's interesting is that there's these type of tax sales taking place everywhere. And so there's good opportunity. If you pick these up for a good price, even in a more rural area like that, if you get it for cheap enough, it still makes a lot of sense to turn around and buy it and sell it for a good profit.
Yeah, that property that we're looking at with $1,500 opening bid, it has a Redfin estimated value of 87,000. So there's a lot of money to be had here with a lot of these properties, even with low opening bid amounts, better than you'd normally see, or I think better in most cases. This other one here with the minimum bid of $2,000, number 1.4. And this one is also, looks like a single family home. Maybe sitting on some kind of foundation as well.
There's a lot of double wides out there, but they still have pretty good value to them. When we were looking at that last one, valued at about 90,000, valued about 116,000. Most of them are valued at $100,000 or more. Even for something like a single wide sometimes.
Well, and that's just, you don't normally see numbers like that for tax sales. Where you have opening bid amounts that are 2% of the property's estimated value, which is essentially what this is. It's just very rare to find numbers that low where the property taxes are that low and the property values are that high. You just don't normally see it. Here's another one, opening bid of 1,700. And let's see what it is here. And this one is also, vacant single-family residential here.
Well, no, it's actually a shed. If you scroll up a little higher, you can see where it says shed, no value. And if you click on the address, it'll pull up the Google map, and we can, I mean, not the Google Street View, and we can kind of look at it. It's actually kind of a big lot.
Where does it say shed?
Right there, right next to it. See where on the left-hand side of where the photo is?
Oh, right here, shed, no value. All right, yeah, I see what you're talking about there.
Because if you go down to the assessment, you're going to see that there's no improvement value. So they're saying, the shed's kind of just there. It has no value to it at all. And so that's something to look at, but it is just kind of a garage shed.
Yeah, and here's just another lot here, similar lot that is listed. This one's sold actually for $25,000 in 2024.
Yeah, and there were some lots for sale for about 50, about the same size, but I was trying to kind of see, what sold very closest to it, as close as I could get to it.
Yeah, which I mean, again, it's opening up for $1,700, and so for it to have sold for 25, that's pretty good numbers right there. And the fact that they're also estimating the value currently at 48 means that, yeah, there's a lot of good room here with this county. And so here's one for $3,400 opening bid or minimum. And this one is also an old home.
Yeah, it's older, kind of rough, but it is kind of right there. You've got a road right next to it. The county's valued around 55,000.
And yeah, we've got it here at 130,000 on Redfin is about what they're estimating it. So like all of these have the same thing in common in that, the opening bid amounts are very low compared to what the properties are estimated to be worth.
Yeah. Well, and as we get a little further down into the list, we're going to get into some different type of land properties. So, we're just looking at kind of some of the structures there. This one here is actually 80 acres. You can kind of see that up at the top, over the top right. So we're talking about a lot of land. There's a couple of structures on it. Where that could be relevant is maybe they have something like a well, or a septic system or something like that set up on it. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to go up and grab the parcel number. It's kind of obnoxious. And then you're going to have to erase the dashes.
Hey, there we go. Oh, nice. There you go. You can see where the property is located at here. So it's a real property, but yeah, 80 acres. It's quite a bit of property, starting pretty low.
Yeah, if you click on the address, it'll take you to the Google, where it's located on Google. So if you scroll out quite a bit, you can see that there's actually roads that are going out there, and it's just south of this community of Cherry Creek. So
Yeah.
you're only just a few minutes. Now it's not a big community, but it's still kind of an area there. 80 acres, and starting at a pretty low bid amount, these could be good land properties that could turn around and flipped and make some real good profit on.
Interesting. And so here we have a couple of different pieces of land that are for sale.
Now these ones have sold, but the first two that we were looking at, I was trying to find what we could find right next. That's only 5 acres.
So 59,000, 5 acres. It sold pretty recently here. So the one we're looking at is what, did you say 80 acres?
80 acres. Yeah, but these lots were sold, pretty close to where this lot was located.
Yeah, this one's also 5 acres that sold for 47,000 a couple of years ago. And then we have 160 here that sold for 180 a couple of years ago. So really the value on the property is probably around 100,000 or more.
Yeah, at least. I mean, you know, even that one that we were just looking at that sold, that one's further out. You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
this
this
one's a
one's
lot
located.
closer. Yeah, a
Yeah,
lot closer to town or to a major road, and it's right between, you know, where you have actually, they may be dirt, but you've got an actual real road there, some type
yeah,
of county maintained road.
that's interesting. For 9100, we have this property right here. This one is 315 acres, so it is a big property here. Let's copy that. We'll go down here to the map and see they're valuing it at 115,000. There is some kind of a structure. They put 15,000 there for some kind of a structure.
Yeah, I think they have a trailer out there. But 315 acres, that's big enough if somebody want to have something like a cattle ranch or, you know, I mean, there's just a lot of different uses for it. I think that there is a lot of things like ranching and stuff that happens within this area.
Oh yeah, that looks. It also looks like it's pretty close to town, or at least not too far away. Oh, look what I just did. Oh, let me pull up my docs here again. There we go.
And I think if you click on you'll pull up the Google location as well, so you can kind of see where it's at. That's where the structure was, I think, was at, and it's everything south of that.
Wow.
So if you look at the map, you know, that's kind of where it borders.
It's huge. Yeah, is everything in green?
No, I don't think so.
I must have pulled off of here. Oh wait, no, is that up? That's it up here. There we go.
I don't know. No, I don't know where it's at.
Maybe it pulled up here. Oh, there we go. There we go. Now we can see it better here. So yeah, now it makes sense. So you can see here's where where we have the, yeah. So basically it's this thing and it goes all the way out here to the road.
And goes
Right
over
here.
side, yeah, it goes over the road, and that's, you know, a main highway. So, you know, you can see the road that goes through it. So there's probably some type of easement that allows the highway obviously to go through the property, but you've got it on both sides of the road. And if you go down to the highway, you can kind of see what it looks like from the ground.
Yeah, so it's all the land up from here up to wherever there's a trailer out here somewhere, probably
So
up
I think
there.
it's the other direction, right? Because it's on the other side of the road, is what I'm
Oh,
saying. You're
oh,
looking on the wrong side of the road, where the trailer would be at least. The trailer would be to your right.
yeah, probably one of those back there.
And so it's kind of all of that land is sold for 9,100, and that 2,100 one is right next to it.
So you've got 38 acres here that sold in 2022 for 120. And well, here's what's currently listed for sale.
Oh, these are ones that have sold. Should have been popping them up for you, but you know, there's this one here that's 300 acres, and then there's one right next to it, the one below it.
This one right here.
Yeah, the 2,900. So these two are right next to each other. You know, they're just on essentially border each other.
So this one's 67 acres. Here we've got the parcel number. And yeah, the opening bid on this one is 2,900, a little bit lower. assessed at 103.
So if you look at both of those, you've got 360 plus 67. You know, that's a lot of land.
Yeah, it is.
And it's all pretty much flat. So you're not talking about, you know, a real mountainous region. You've also got the main highway right there, so anyone can access it easy. See, that's just to the left of it.
Yeah, it is.
To the right of it.
Yeah, it would be connected.
Yeah.
It would be connected to that property. So here's the 360 acres, and here is the 67 acres right here. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's basically right there in the same location here.
Yeah, it's just across the street and down further. Kind of borders the whole thing a little bit.
Well, yeah, that is remarkable. There are really good deals there. And what is this, another county that's out there?
This is just Churchill. They're doing an online auction through Bid for Assets.
Oh, interesting. They've got 13 properties here available.
Yeah, and we could look up a couple of them if we want to. This one starts at $274. You can see that it's 17 acres. It's not very much.
Do I need to take out these?
No.
Oh, good. And let's see the map.
And it's kind of, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, but you're still talking about 17 acres at $275. Now you've got to put it in.
Oh, interesting.
But you can see that there is kind of a road up there. You can see it come along that top of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not bad for the money here for such a cheap property. That's not bad at all. For 1,100 here. This one's 20 acres.
Yeah, in fact, I think this one, there may have been access point to it. I think it was a little bit more in the mountains.
Yeah, they're all pretty cheap though. I mean, at least what we've seen so far, these have been pretty inexpensive. 1128 on this one as well. See if it's the same size. Might even be close to it. Probably right next to it. Yep.
Yeah, there's a couple that have some, I think even bigger sizes.
Yeah, see 20 acres.
That one's got an address to it.
Oh, it did. I did not see that.
Not this one, but must have been one of the other ones.
Here's one for 4,200 that does have a full address. It says it's 29 acres. Let's see where it pulls up here on the address. Oh, yes, it does pull up. And yeah, actually, the location on that looks pretty nice.
Well, look at you see the water to the left, and then you've got all that, farmland to the south.
Yeah, that actually looks like a pretty nice property here.
It also looks like it might have that a canal going through it or next to it.
Oh yeah, here it is right here. So yeah, you can see it does have, that canal going through part of it there, but it's nice, it's nice and accessible by other neighbors here and close to, it's not difficult to access. Is this Ely here?
No, that's one. I don't know. I think
Might
that was
be.
the other county we're looking at. I
Oh,
think this
oh,
is,
Fallon. Yeah, that's city of Fallon.
yeah. I think Ely was in the other county. We're the White Pine.
Yeah, this one also has a full address here. This one's a 1 acre, and so this one's a little bit different here. Let's pull up the address and see.
Obviously we're looking into more rural areas today, but they still have auctions, in Reno, in Las Vegas, Clark County, and in the bigger areas as well.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so this one is one of those sales where it's a more rural county, but the properties start really cheap, and a lot of these properties are actually pretty usable for being cheap properties and big chunks of land. They're pretty accessible.
Yeah, yeah. So there's definitely opportunity out there with the on-site auctions, obviously with the online auctions as well. And as far as this year, Clark County, the biggest county out of all of them, is still holding an on-site auction. So, in fact, I was going through the 2025. I could get the results in 2024, and there was some real good deals where, there was between $200,000 to $300,000 worth of potential profit on some of the homes that were purchased in the Vegas area.
I don't know if the hills. I noticed Dan was wondering if the hills were buildable there. I don't know about some of the lots there that are bigger. I mean, certainly they're big enough plots that you could find somewhere there within 20 acres that would be usable. But other ones though were quite flat and pretty easy to use. They're pretty accessible. And so yeah, it was kind of interesting here. Do we have a team in Nevada? Not in these places, at least not in the areas here that we've looked at. We've worked with people in Nevada before, but with these small counties though, this is the first we've actually looked at some of these counties, like the counties we looked at today.
Yeah, yeah, definitely in this type of review. But if you're picking up this type of land, would probably wholesale it if it had enough value, would take it through quiet title and list it. There were some questions, and if you guys have any questions, you feel free to ask them in the YouTube video. The first one, said, and this was talking about a property that was picked up, said without heat and air, it'll be filled with mold. And then somebody responded to it and said, let others pass up the house. I got my home from the repository list for $600 plus administration costs, so it cost them $1,000 total. So there was somebody saying, "Hey, yeah, well, you've got to work out all of these issues," and he responded essentially said, "Hey, I bought a home for $600 through the repository sale. So congratulations."
Yeah, that is great to see. And it is true, for one man's junk is another man's treasure. It's all about what you do going into the situation, and certainly there are opportunities that are out there. In fact, it goes really well with the kind of the stuff we were talking about with land banks. He got his from a repository list, so we know he got it specifically from Pennsylvania. We know there's repository opportunities there in Pennsylvania all the time. And it's funny that they do offer a lot of their properties starting at $600, and so that's why that story is even all the more believable, because we know that's about the amount they start at.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. In fact, Greg was talking about an EPA property that we were looking at last week, and how you need to watch for those type of issues, and just kind of talking about there are programs where he lives in Michigan to help with cleanup. So it's
Yes.
something to look into if you're looking at something that could have an EPA issue. Before buying, it'd probably be worth it to look up any of those type of services that could be to their local to you.
Well, what's crazy is that yeah, that week, in fact, the last couple of weeks in a row, we have looked at properties that had serious EPA issues, and one of them was actually part of a Superfund site. Probably the most polluted place in the whole state that we were looking at, that had just a massive record there for all the things that we're doing there with the site. And we looked at another one from a sale that was in the San Francisco area that we were looking at there, that from metal plating business, that had been hit by the EPA several times, and we're looking at some of the properties in there. And yeah, I think there are a lot of programs to get the things cleaned up. And that's kind of what the Superfund sites were all about. It was kind of about a big EPA slush fund that they use. I think it's a slush fund essentially for environmental cleanup stuff, and if the Superfund sites qualify for things in terms of like some of those funds.
Yeah, we had another question that asked about buying tax deed property and how to avoid mechanics liens. And that's one thing about a judicial foreclosure, except for in a few circumstances like New Mexico, any type of mechanics lien is going to be essentially extinguished through that tax deed foreclosure. And so as far as your question about, a video going over that, that's really what we talk about when we talk about our 3 stages of due diligence. Each one of those, with stage 2 in particular, that's going to help you look for anything that could stick to the property. And in a tax deed foreclosure, that's really going to be something like a government issued lien. So mechanics liens, in most cases, those aren't going to be applied to the deed.
Yeah, another question was, after quiet title action, can the homeowner still take it back? And the answer to that is no. In fact, after the tax sale, they really can't take it back, because that has been, the tax sale has been executed. In fact, the quiet title action is basically just your effort to, to set and have uncontested ownership rights. So they really couldn't even challenge it at that point. The judicial foreclosure is pretty final. And so if the judicial foreclosure takes place and the property is lost, there's nothing to really undo or reverse that. The property is basically sold, the costs are recovered there. And however, if they lost the property in the tax sale, there's a good chance that they could end up with a fair amount of overage or overbid that could be owed to them, just because properties sell for large amounts at tax sales, sometimes way above what is owed in taxes, and sometimes even more than what's owed in any kind of liens. And there's money left over there for the property owner that lost the property.
Yeah, exactly. That's where you get into the overage strategy. Another question is, so is the 60-day in all of counties in Georgia or select few? And what that question about is, in Georgia, there's 2 different redemption periods. There's something that's called a judicial foreclosure, and then just your regular tax deed or redemption deed in Georgia. And so for most of the time up until recently, it was only a 1-year redemption period. But there's some areas in Georgia that are going through a judicial foreclosure, and they only have a 60-day redemption period. And so as far as your question about, is there just a select few, some counties in Georgia will do pretty much only the judicial foreclosures. Some counties do only the non-judicial, which is essentially that 1-year period, or there's some counties that do a combination of both.
Yeah, so it is a little bit confusing here. But the one nice thing about Georgia and Texas is that they do all hold their sales, though, as often as needed, but every month, the first Tuesday of the month, they both have their sales on the same dates. So you always know when the sales will take place in various counties throughout Georgia or Texas if they have properties to sell.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them in the YouTube comments, and we're going to try to address some of those questions each week. So is there any other questions that we have, Shade?
I don't think so. I think we've kind of been answering here, as we went here. I know that Dan had a couple of questions here, but I think we answered them. So I think that's everything here from the group.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate you guys attending tonight, and we hope to see you again next week.
Yeah, you bet. These podcasts are fun to do, but we enjoy doing them, and yeah, we love having everybody out. So we'll be back again next week. We'll cover some more interesting properties.
Yep. Thanks again, everyone.
We'll see you then.